Hello and welcome everyone to Odoo Experience. My name is Shigar. I'm a software engineering manager at Odoo San Francisco office, and we create a tailored solution business process automation for any business need that any customer or partner might have. Today's topic for our talk is going to be in how to develop an in-app purchase using Odoo services. Now, in-app purchase refers to an buying of a service from within the application. It is basically a microtransaction services that we have Odoo has designed that can be developed to provide services that otherwise you will find on the internet and will not find in the Odoo, but you will want to facilitate that to any regular user. The IAP services can be any sort of service. It can be a human service, it can be a machine service, it can be as simple as reviewing the document. It can be as simple as translating a document. If you are a lawyer and if you want to do a review of a document, you want to submit, you want to give an opinion on the legal document, and you want to create service for this, for sure you can create service for this, where you can have a microtransaction. Users can submit a document through the IAP, and the other end of the reviewer will receive the document. They will review that, they will submit their own review on the document, and when they will submit the review, you will charge end user from their IAP credit. In this whole transaction, usually the credit and the transaction management is done by Odoo. When a pack is purchased, usually a pack will be the creator of the app will get the transaction fee for that, and Odoo will take commission out of it for managing the service and doing transactions for you. So let's dive into that. So how does IAP work? What is a normal service flow for IAP? So that's what I'm going to present it here. Usually, as you see on the screen, there are three main parties involved in the whole transaction. One, end user. That means wherever you are running your Odoo, that's the end user or end customer. Then you have the service provider. That means the person who actually provides these IAP services, so the vendor of the IAP services. And then you have IAP services that runs the whole IAP transaction services. So these are the three main elements in this whole transaction. And of course, you may have external services if you're IAP vendor, and if you are IAP vendor, and if you are using some external services to provide an IAP service. For example, if you are providing an service for reading in cryptocurrency rate, right? You may use some third-party cryptocurrency services or API to get the cryptocurrency rate and then provide to the end user request. So you may not compute by yourself, rather you are using some third-party services to bring the rate and then give it to the request. So in this case, the external service provider is coming into picture. If you are providing service by yourself, then probably you may not use external service provider. So it's an optional piece depending what you are doing. Now, how would a service flow would work, right? How would the entire transaction would flow? So end user will first make a request, and that request will directly make to the IAP vendor server, where vendor is providing a service. So usually when I say vendor server, that means there will be some sort of API services available on the internet, where the customer server, when a customer does something, clicks a button, sends a request to the service provider server, and on that server, the server will read the request, and then it will send a request to the IAP server and say, hey, this user has requested me this transaction. And then this transaction will be checked against the IAP to check if the user has a right credit and has signed up for your app. So basically, this is a transaction validation. Now, if let's say this service is correct, so that means there is a response that is coming back to service provider. If service is correct, then the service provider will render the service. So they will do whatever that needs to be done. So if it's let's say getting a rate, then they will get the rate. If reviewing the document, then they'll start reviewing the document, because in the first transaction they will try to do the credit hold onto the customer's account. So vendor will perform a credit hold for the transaction that they have requested, given that the user has a valid transaction or valid credit available. So that's what is happening here. Then when a service is rendered, the vendor will go to the IAP server and they will charge the credit that was a credit hold before. So now a vendor has rendered the services, and now they are going to IAP server and telling IAP server that, okay, I made a credit hold before, and because I have rendered my services, I want to charge for the credit hold. So they will charge for the credit hold, and at the same time they will reply back to end customer, telling end customer that, uh, hey, this is the service that you wanted, here's your service. So as you will see, it's a whole 5-step transaction service. End user making a call to the vendor, vendor validating and doing credit hold, then rendering the service. If the service rendering goes good, then they will basically charge customer, and then at the same time they will also update the customer. So that's the service flow that I just explained. The client request IAP, IAP validation credit hold, service provider render services, capture or cancel depending on what it is. Of course, if the rendering of the service is failure, if they cannot provide service, they can also cancel the credit hold, and then update the client back. And this is insufficient credit flow, where customer do not have a credit or they haven't signed up for the services. So of course the client will make us API call to the vendor server. The vendor server will check with IAP server that, hey, does this user have a credit check, sufficient credit or not. If they do not have sufficient credit, then it will reply back to the client saying that you do not have sufficient credit, and that in turn will redirect user to the IAP services and will let user uh, do its basically buy services or add credit, whatever credit that they would like to add. Uh, then building building your, so now it's all about building your services. So uh, let's talk about how to register service with an Odoo IAP. So to register your service with Odoo IAP, you can go to the iap.odoo.com, or you can simply, for sandbox, if you're testing, of course you can go to the iapsandbox.odoo.com, and then you can go to the my services, and basically you will create a service. As you would see, service will ask you for the service name, that is a static service name, unique service name. Your service name will not change after you decide, so be careful in deciding the service name. Then some description for your services, and then what is the unit that you want to use for your credit. You can decide whatever unit you want to call it. For example, uh, if you want to review, if you provide a review document services, you can say document credit, or document reviewed, one document, two document, and each document may translate to monetary value in Odoo that you will decide. So you can decide the unit of measure for your service. If you do not provide any unit of measure, then it will say credits by default. And when users sign up for your account, if you do you want to give them a trial credit where they can try your app, then you can also give them some trial credit where they can actually trial your app without paying upfront. So that option is also available. So it's more, you can do kind of freemium kind of stuff here. Then you can define multiple packs that you want to sell. So you can have multi-tier pack, like a starter pack, small business pack, medium business pack, enterprise pack. So you can have multiple pack like this. As you will see here, this is the final page after registering the service. I registered the service, I added a pack, and that's how it's going to look like. And remember, when you register your service, you will also get a transaction key. That transaction key is a unique and you will not see that transaction key again. So remember to store the transaction key securely somewhere, because it is going to be extremely important for your running in transaction. If you lose a transaction key, then you will have to regenerate a new key. You won't be able to regenerate the previous key that you had. So remember to store your transaction key. Right. Next is the credit. So as I said, credit it's a credit to charge, of course, transaction that you're running. Credit is a float number, and basically it's a value that is a monetary value that translates to a monetary value at the end of the day. Every service that you have provided will be charged with the credit that you are going to, of course, take from customer's account. So that is credit. And examples of the credit are, for example, one SMS equal to one SMS credit, 10 credit equal to one Google ad. For example, you are providing a Google ad service and you want to charge for the Google ad, so you can provide an IAP service for the Google ad. So same thing is available here as well. And of course, the monetary value of the credit changes by every service. Every service provider has a control on what sort of what kind of charge they want to charge for the service that they are providing. So credit is basically the way to charge for your service. And remember, the credit value are fixed once you decide that. So once you decide a credit, this is the credit value, then you cannot change it. So make sure to be careful in making that decision. Now next is, now you have registered your app. Now we need to create a user app where user can go to their application and can request IAP request to the vendor server. So that's what we are going to do. So to create an uh, user app of course is the request for the service provider. uh, your user app has to depend on IAP out of the box, because IAP is the parent app for all the IAP services, and IAP provides in tools and libraries that we will see later in this slide that makes your life easy when you're implementing the IAP services. So that's where the IAP module comes into picture. Add client-side business logic for desired services. So of course you will write some sort of client-side business logic to make an API call, receive the response, update back, some sanity check on the transaction. Of course you don't want to overcharge customer. You do not want to receive and request if customer has not set up data correctly. So some sanity checks, some transaction services, some transaction implementation needs to be done. So that's what you are doing right here. uh, Remember, IAP does not require some specific protocol or services. You can use any sort of API, any kind of services on the internet to write API. The vendor side app can be hosted and anywhere on any service on the internet as well as on your computer, and that can be integrated using IAP. There is no specific requirement of a protocol or services. You can use REST, XML RPC, JSON RPC, you can use EDI. That's another good example. If you want to do microtransaction services for the EDI, you can also do that. That you want to charge an 5 cent for each EDI document. Absolutely, you can do that. Each transaction will require a client account token. As I said, the credit is required, and alongside the credit to perform each transaction, account has to the user app has to provide an account token, which can be generated using IAP. Uh, IAP parent app. Basically, you just need to say IAP.get token. It will give you the token that you need to use for the transaction. It's the IAP app basically makes your life super easy onto the client side. Now here's IAP helper. So one of the helper is capture. So capture is basically it's not something that we usually advise, but uh, it's used for capturing a transaction. Sorry, this is charge actually. So charge is used for charging the service right away. So what does charge do is charge is usually it does a credit hold, and then it basically it applies the credit, and it tries to also uh, charge credit right away. So it basically do the credit hold, charge, and if fails then cancel. It's a single whole transaction in a one call. So if you want to do one call transaction for entire hold, charge, or cancel, then you want to use a charge API. Charge API is basically combination of the entire transaction that we are going to see the next slide. Transactions API. So the transaction API is something that you have to do on the server provider side. So as a vendor, if you're providing this service, so this is what you will be doing. You will be using some sort of a transaction APIs. So here are the transaction APIs. Authorize. So authorize verifies that the user has at least ask credit available and create a hold on the amount. Now remember, when user sends a request to the vendor will be the one who will be processing the transaction. And when a vendor is processing a transaction, vendor can send that how much credit you want to charge for this. So you can decide that, okay, for this service I want to charge 10 credit. For other service you may choose you want to charge 1 credit. For example, you are providing, let's say, crypto mining services using microtransaction, and you are using a CPU computation, then every second of a CPU translates to 1 credit, and 1 minute translates to $1, and probably 10 minutes translate to $10, right? And you want to charge by that, then you can obviously do some basic credit hold, and then you can charge by that as well. So authorize is a way to check if customer has the credit available that you want to use, right? Customer may have a 5 credit and you want to use a 10 credit, then authorize will return you insufficient balance error. And remember, IAP is a very simple in error handling. You do not have to worry too much about error handling. If you do not have a sufficient credit, then IAP server will automatically raise that, and you just need to forward that to a client, and the client IAP app will automatically take care of the raising of the right error. And if there's a redirect needs to be done, then client IAP can also do the redirect. So this is really good. Authorized transaction. Next is a capture. What does capture do? Is capture confirms the specified transactions. So when you do the authorize, when you do the credit hold, what does credit hold will do is it will return a key, which is your transaction key for that particular transaction. You will need to store that transaction key to make sure that when you later want to do capture, when you render your service and you want to do capture, then when you do the capture, you want to pass that key to the IAP server that okay, capture this token that I had a hold on, and using that token, IAP will basically charge transaction services. And let's say last is a cancel. Now let's say if there was a failure in rendering of the service, and you wanna cancel it, so you can simply make an IAP cancel call, and cancel will simply cancel the credit hold, and now credit is released for the customer, and customer can use this credit for something else or for next transaction. So that's how you can basically perform a transaction authorize, which is a credit hold, render your service. If it's a good, then do the credit charge, and if no, then cancel it. And capture is basically capturing the credit hold value that you had a credit hold on. Now let's look at some of the IAP service provider helpers. First, charging. Charge basically it authorizes the transaction with a specified number of credit. If the account do not have a credit, then it will raise an relevant error. And of course, if you have some specific template specified, then it will return specific template. IAP charger helpers has two additional optional parameters that you can use. For example, you can use a description, and you can use a credit template. If you want to pass a elaborative description that this charge is for what kind of a service, then you can pass a description, and that descriptions will be stored onto our side. So in case of dispute, actually we can help answer what happened. And you can use a credit transaction. So when a transaction is done, you can return a template, and IAP can return a template to the client side, and client will render that message, whatever message that you want to render. So those are the additional extra parameter available. Remember, charging is a context manager for authorizing and automatically capturing or canceling transaction at the same time. Everything happens at the same time. Entire transaction will run at the same time. Authorize. This is IAP helpers available into the IAP app when you are implementing IAP using Odoo. So if you are a vendor, and if you are implementing IAP services using Odoo, then these are your options. If you are implementing IAP service somewhere else, then you can use a REST RPC or JSON RPC to make a call to Odoo using it to the same endpoint. So here we are talking about if you're doing with Odoo, and these are the helpers which makes server-side implementation extremely easy. And of course, since you already know Odoo, we are expecting that probably you will be using Odoo as a service server to provide a service, and that's where this makes your life super easy. Authorize. So we are talking about authorize, where authorize will verify user account has enough credit, and if there is any credit, then it will basically do the credit hold. Capture will basically capture the amount that we had previously had a credit hold on. Cancel will cancel the credit hold that we had, and it will cancel the transaction, and it will not charge any credit to a customer. Testing an IAP. So how will you test an IAP? If you were to test an IAP, then you can test your IAP at iapsandbox.com. You can go there, and you can simply register your service there. Remember, by default, your IAP is designed to talk to iap.odoo.com. So if you want to use a sandbox, then you want to go to settings, system parameters, and you want to set up a key called IAP service, and you want to set a value called iapsandbox.odoo.com. And as you will see, IAP endpoint, and then that's the value that you want to set, and that will guarantee that your IAP server will now talk to sandbox. And when you're using a sandbox, you can use a special transaction key. If you use a 000 6 zeros, then that will represent that customer they have insufficient credit, at 0003031 is basically customer, it's unauthorized transaction, and 11161s are authorized transaction where customer has enough credit and everything is good situation. So you can pass a special token. Remember, when you register your IAP, you get a token. So instead of that token, you use one of these three token for testing, and that will do the job for you. And for this presentation, we are not doing demo, but you can go to the link that you have up below to get the source code of a demo if you want to try out a demo application by yourself. And thank you everyone for joining this talk today. Now we'll be switching to Q&A. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jigar, for this amazing presentation on AIP. Something that many people forget about this application and these features, but it's actually very, very important, and it can be very useful for many cases.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for you for being with me here, and you're absolutely right in saying that this is a feature that has been oftentimes forgotten or overlooked, but it is a very valuable feature, and you can really generate good revenue stream with this feature.
Yeah, few example about, because Odoo is also developing, is connecting with AIP. Do you have any few example about what Odoo is doing as well on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we do have a couple of services that is already implemented. If you go to iap.odoo.com and if you look at the services, you will find Odoo services as SMS, localization service for Latin American countries, where you have to send documents to the government body to report your taxes and things like that. So there is Peruvian localization services available. Then we also have the partner autocomplete, lead generation, SMS. So there are a lot of already implemented services
OCR,
are available.
right?
OCR as well.
OCR,
Yeah, exactly. So those services are already available, ready to use. And the good part about this is these services are already available for our online customer. And so you don't have to be on SH. You can be on our online platform, and you can still have this service. So it's more like you can have a customized services if you wish to get a customized service using IAP, and you can offer services that otherwise would not be possible to have on online platform.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have seen a couple of these modules already integrated for many different requirements of the clients. What do you think is appealing to the market today as modules who can be offered to our clients?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, for example, one of the talk we had today, which was about EDI, right? If you want to implement EDI, if you want to provide an EDI service, right? Usually EDI services they charge you by transaction, and that's a perfect example and perfect fit for this kind of service. You can implement EDI services for different documents, for different trading partners, and you can simply just charge by transaction, and you can generate a steady revenue stream, because every business who is doing an running an online store and providing the goods, and probably during COVID-19, right? That is what everyone is mostly doing, right? So everyone is going to need those kind of tool, and that's a really good revenue stream for anyone who is interested in doing this. Similar to that, SMS marketing. That could be, for example, lawyers providing their service, right? You want certain document to be reviewed by the lawyers, right? You can upload a document, you can send it to lawyer, they can review and they can provide a feedback. That can be a service, right? So there's a lot of microtransaction services that otherwise will not be available to the business software if there's no integration platform, and IAP fills that gap.
Yeah. Talking about that, if I'm a partner and I want to publish and monetize this kind of application, did Odoo how did the transaction is working between me and Odoo? Because Odoo is collecting the money, but I need to make sure I have the money. Did they have any system of commission, something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so Odoo usually would charge a 25% flat commission on top of your pack. So usually when you will register your IAP, what you will have to decide is what sort of pack or what sort of services that you want to provide, and services are decided in the increments of pack, and you can decide the size of the pack by yourself, and whatever amount that you decide, monetary value, Odoo will take 25% as a commission to provide this service and maintain this service for you.
All right, thank you. We have just one more question from the chat. From an IOP notification, it takes more than 15 seconds, only sometimes. Why does it happen? Any idea?
So the main reason could be server is overloaded. There's too much traffic on the servers. That could be one of the reason. And if it takes more than given seconds, more than given time, then you'll always get the authentication rejection, or you will get an error, because there is a set timeout on each transaction to tell you that a transaction should be timeout after this. So it should not be somewhere in between. It should be either authenticated or not authenticated.
Yeah. Black and white.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Jigar, for this talk. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions on the chat, and we're trying to answer.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.